Shavua Tov Rabotai. We just counted the 15th day of the Omer. It is Motzei Shabbat, and it is also Rosh Chodesh. We are continuing in the 9th parak of Kilayim in the Mishnah Yomi, and we are on the 7th Mishnah. Habarsin v'habardasin. So the Bartner understands these are different kinds of quilts or blankets of different thicknesses, usually made of wool. V'haldalmat tikon, not a Dalmatian, but a long johns made of wool. Umin alut hapinon, and these slippers of pinon. These are all woolen items. The Mishnah says, Lo yilbosh behem al jivduk. Don't wear them until you've checked, because sometimes there's actually flax in these items. Also, you have to check it out. Even though they're usually made of wool, sometimes flax gets mixed in and would make it kilayim. B'yosi omer habayim michof hayam medinas hayam. Those that come from the seashore and from overseas, the cheap import versions apparently, einon tzrichin bedika. These don't need bedika. Mipnei shechazkoson bekanbus, because they typically make them out of kanbus, out of hemp, rather than out of pishtan, flax itself. So if there is something mixed in with the wool, it would actually be kanbus rather than flax. Minol shel zerid, and the minol shel zerid is a certain kind of boot. It's like a boot that has a wool lining to keep out the cold. Ein bo mishum kilayim. That lining doesn't have kilayim in it. Now the Bartner already points out in his day, the chazaka has changed a bit, and such items should be checked for Shatnez, even if they're imports, whatever it is. Lamaisa nowadays, sometimes the cheap suits don't have Shatnez, but the expensive ones do. Sometimes vice versa. So if you live in Baltimore, you take it to Rabbi Goldface on Midfield Road, or his son Binyamin. They check, they know what's going on, or any other Shatnez checkers, and you have it looked at and figured out, because you can't always rely on the chazaka, because sometimes the suppliers change or the way they manufacture things change. It's not always done the same way. Mishnah Ches, the 8th Mishnah, says, Ein asur mishum kilayim ela tavui v'arug. It's only asur kilayim if it is spun and woven. Shenemar, because it says, Lo tilbash Shatnez. Now, Shatnez is a really bizarre word, and it's actually an acronym. It's an abbreviation for Davar Shu Shu'a Tavui Venuz. So Shatnez is really Shu'a Tavui Venuz. And Shu'a means smoothed out in the sense of combed. When these fibers are raw, they're sort of sticky and kind of a lot of fibers going in different directions, and they're not really good for threads. They have to comb them out to be smooth. And tavui is spun into individual threads, and the nuz is woven together into an actual garment. So if someone took raw wool, totally unprocessed, and raw flax, unprocessed, and just stuck them together, that's not kilayim deraisa. Now it's kilayim derabanan. Don't play with that stuff. Don't wear it, really, is the isser. But kilayim deraisa, it's not until it's been processed by being smoothed, spun into threads, and woven. But the exact definition of this process is a machlokes rishonim. And famously, we actually recently had this in the Daf Yomi. It shows up in Yavamas Daf Hey, when we're discussing the concept of a mitzvah aseh, a positive commandment to do something, being doche, overriding a negative commandment, because that's what yibum is. It's a mitzvah aseh that's doche and what's normally prohibited, the brother's widow, but it talks about kilayim in that concept, and there's an amazing Rashi on Hey Amud Beis in Yivamos, and he says, Min Torah eino chayiv ad shehu hatzemer v'hapishtim metuchan yakad heitev b'mosrik. He says, it's not asur deraisa until the wool and the linen is fixed together well with a comb. So it sounds like the Rashi is saying you have to comb them together at the same time, spin them together, and then weave them together. The Taisus has issues with this. He cites the Rivan, it was a similar shita, and he says it really doesn't require these things to be processed at the same time, but just not the raw materials stuck together. That the Isser Deraisa, Taisos explains, is when you've processed them independently, the wool and the linen, and then combine them. Because otherwise, how would you ever have a tzitzis? Because we learned that tzitzis overrides kilayim. You'd never have a tzitzis if we follow Rashi or the Rivan, that they have to be processed together, because tzitzis, you're simply tying wool strings into a linen beged. That would be mutter deraisa in terms of tzitzis. We don't do that nowadays. We do wool strings on a cotton beged or wool on a wool beged, sure, fine. But deraisa would be mutter to have wool strings on a linen beged. They're merely tied on. They're not woven together. They're not spun together. Tzitzis explains there, but you see in the Bartanura also, he brings different pshatim on this Shua Toiv news. It's not so simple what this acronym really means. Well, we know the literal meaning of the word: smooth, spun into threads, and woven. But at what phase of this processing do they have to be together is a debate among the Rishonim. So that's Yevamos Hey Amud Beis. That brings the Taisvos there, brings a lot of shitas. The Mishnah concludes here. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, he says there's another meaning to Shatnez, that the end, this nun zayin at the end, nez, also means noloz. It's twisted away or turned away. Umelizu at aviv shabashamayim love, and he turns his father in heaven away from him. So somebody who's wearing Shatnez, he's turning away from the mitzvah, and he's turning Hashem away. You have to also be aware, Rambam writes about anthropomorphisms, nothing human beings do can really affect Hashem. But by human beings not doing Ratzon Hashem, not doing a mitzvah, not following the Torah, then we get less divine favor as just a natural consequence of what human beings have done, but we really can't affect Hashem with our actions. So that's Rambam and anthropomorphisms, and that's Shatnez standing for Shua, Tavui Venuz. Tomorrow is the last day of Kilayim. Mazel Tov in advance. And then on Monday, we are starting Shavit. If you're here in Baltimore, we have copies of the Art Scroll Mishnah available at the front of the shul at Suburban. Shavuot Tov, Chodesh Tov, Good Vach, be well.